After another little break, hello and welcome back to Chiefsman's Corner. I'm your host, Coach Winuvas of the UTEP Miners, and for those of you who have been around this community for a long time, yes, we are dusting off Chiefsman's Corner for one last hurrah, this time with the VCFA. I talked about it in an earlier recording, and this is going to be the official first broadcast as promised. Every Wednesday, I will be recording this in the afternoon, so if it's a little bright here, as you can see in the camera, pardon that. I got a window I can't block. But for today's show, we're going to do something real simple. We're roughly around the midway point of our season 15, of VCFA, going into our third cycle of college football, going into college football 27. So I wanted to take a look at the league as a whole and see exactly where all our user-controlled teams are and go over conference standings for those user-controlled conferences. We're going to look at everybody's win-loss record. We're going to talk about a few teams. We're going to point out a few teams that kind of warrant some pointing out, either for being hot or for being not so hot, for having a little bit of a rougher first season. Then we'll take a trip through the conference standings to see who is actually in position to make some noise as we head for the second half of the season. Eventually, as discussed, I would like the show to become more of a highlight show. I would love to be able to eventually show some of the big plays, crazy finishes, interceptions, touchdowns, whatever you guys think is worth putting on the podcast, I want to put out there. And as promised, I said, hey, let's get some highlights. Unfortunately, nobody sent any highlights, and that includes yours truly. So, unfortunately, good job, everybody. Yeah, okay. Hopefully, moving forward, especially since we did add some newcomers, since I did the recording that we were bringing back Chiefman's Corner for VCFA, we have added a few people. We've lost a person or two here along the way as well. But hopefully, with the newcomers, maybe they can get on board with it as well. Please, please, please go into your PlayStation, record highlights however you can. Take clips off of YouTube if you need to. Send me the clip. Give me a general description of what's going on. If you can add in names of players, as obviously your own players, I can try and look up the players for the opposing team. But if you can include both of those things, that would be great. Anything to help me kind of narrate the highlight as I show it will be huge. And if we can get that rolling and get enough of those, I would love to make that a permanent portion of the show. Obviously, I don't have any this week, so we won't have that. We're going to be talking again conference highlights and win-loss records, so it's going to be a little bit more of a mundane thing this show, but hopefully as we move forward, this will be more of a clips-based show and also an Ask the Chief show. We have not done that in a very, very long time. I have to remake the forms for it, but I'm hoping between now and the next episode, I will relaunch the Ask the Chief question segment. If I get at least one question during the segment, obviously it will count as experience for the end of season for your off-season regimen points. It is something you can do to build towards your incentive as far as XP gained to make sure you're getting all the incentives that are allotted to you in the VCFA. Hopefully, I get some questions next week. Again, that form will be released. Check the Discord for any sort of news on that within the next, say, 24, 48 hours. Hopefully, by next Wednesday, I'll have that at least ready to go, and hopefully, I'll have a question or two to answer, and I can have its own dedicated segment. But of course, since it's not launched right now, we won't have it. But I do want to say that it is hopefully, crossing fingers, making a comeback, and hopefully you guys will participate in that and make it an enjoyable experience for everybody. I just want to get you kind of into the swing of things since I'm, again, planning on making this a weekly show. It'll be always recorded in case you aren't aware. It will always be a recorded show. There will be no live shows, unfortunately, with the way that I'm having to do this. This is the only time I have the house to myself where I can do the recordings in peace and quiet. So it is something that I have to work around the missus' very lax work schedule because she's retired right now. But I'm hoping I can work both the highlights and Ask the Chief into future shows. If I don't get highlights or I don't get any questions, obviously those segments will be cut and we'll just do a general talk about the state of the league as it were, or the dynasty as it were, at that particular point in time. So with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's get to talking about the VCFA as it stands right now. And here we are in the screen here, but before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick to get us to our first set of schedules and show off the stuff. Now, as you can see, we're going to start with my team, the UTEP Miners. I singled them out because that's where I start by default. But I wanted to note this schedule up to week 8. Obviously, we've had some week 9 games come into play. They will be thrown in here and added in, but it'll be something where I kind of have to talk about it a little bit extra because unfortunately the little graphic will never change from UTEP, so I'll have to flip through each team. So you're going to see UTEP a lot, but we're actually talking about every team here. UTEP comes in at 5-2 going into week 9 as we are sitting right now. And nicely, the schedule starts from week 1 to 8, so we can kind of get a look-see and see what UTEP had to do so far. Started slow out of the gate, 1-2, but if you look at that monster schedule, they had to deal with number 4 Oklahoma and number 16 Michigan. We're close against Oklahoma, closer than probably a lot of pundits expected, but ultimately fell 38-31. Then a win against FCS Midwest, 41-10, the final there. Michigan, that was a bit of a humbling experience. Michigan beat up the UTEP Miners up and down the field. 30-10 was the final there. But after that, once we got into kind of more even competition for the Miners, we noticed, hey, we're pulling out some close wins. They're close because of the competition level, but we are pulling out the wins there. Oregon State, 7-point win. New Mexico, conference, 7-point win. Nevada, conference, 8-point win. And probably the biggest win to date going into the bye week, a 45-14 thumping of San Jose, the San Jose State Spartans. Again, 3-0 in conference play. We'll talk about conference more at the end of the show, but for right now, I just want to mention UTEP is one of 3 user teams with 5 wins on the season. Here we show off the UTSA Roadrunners, and earlier I mentioned 3 teams had 5 wins on the season that are user-based. I was incorrect. It's actually 5. This is one of the 5. UTSA and the Roadrunners have come to life so far this season. They are 5-3 on the season. As you can see, they have 2 straight wins against Navy and Tulane, a close loss against UCF, a ranked USF team, a blowout win against Rice, a 7-point win against Colorado State, and a score you expect to see there, a big loss to Texas. UTSA is not on the level of Texas, neither is UTEP, but they are looking to grow and looking good in the American Athletic Conference, or actually now it's just the American Conference. Moving on to the next team. Another 5-win team is the Boise State Broncos. Coach Crazy Fast has these guys playing pretty well after a week 1 thumping from Oregon, 56-10. But Oregon is a head and shoulders better team than Boise State. I don't even think Coach Crazy Fast would argue me on that one. A close 1-point win against Memphis, then a beatdown against FCS Northwest, not to be unexpected there. A close win against Western Michigan, and a win going away against Utah State put 4 straight wins into the Boise State Broncos pockets. Then an upset, I would dare say, although on the road against Fresno State, I'd probably say Crazy Fast thought he should win that one. 7-point loss there, 34-27. And then finally, after a bye week in week 7, get back on track with a 38-3 thumping of the Washington State Cougars. Next up is the Eastern Michigan Eagles. They have had a rough go of it in season 1. Coach Smashmouth has had a lot of trouble getting the team rolling with his style of football. It is a tough environment up there in Eastern Michigan right now. He sits at 2-7 on the season. He's got 4 straight losses, to start the season. But to be fair, 2 of those games are against Michigan State and Wisconsin. You cannot hold that against a team that is outmatched, as Eastern Michigan would be there. a loss to San Jose State week one, a close loss to a user team in Sacramento State week one, or week zero, excuse me, in the kickoff week against Sacramento State, welcoming them to the MAC conference. But we have wins against FCS Midwest. We have a win against Toledo, which is a good win against a solid MAC team. Unfortunately, go in week 8 and you lose 45-9. Although that was a simulated game, it was a tough game for Eastern Michigan to swallow. 2-7. With a solid recruiting class, I think this team can be on the rise. It's a little bit of growing pains right now in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Next up, we have the East Carolina Pirates, and Coach Clyde will be the first to tell you he really didn't appreciate the fact that Alabama showed up on the schedule. But I guarantee you, I watched this game, and for 3 quarters, it looked like East Carolina was going to win that one. Then Alabama remembered they were Alabama and came back furiously to win that one. But at one point, East Carolina was up on Alabama. I do not remember by how much, but I know they were up. But Alabama just won going away 31-16. Then a close loss, low scoring game to Appalachian State, a 2-point nail biter loss to Old Dominion, and then you get on track with your first win against FCS Southeast, get 3 straight wins going to Rice, or having Rice at home, and then going to Birmingham and playing UAB and winning that one. But unfortunately, they ran into the buzzsaw known as Memphis, and Memphis took them to the woodshed 35-10. This is a team that is struggling a little bit, but they are starting to kind of find their stride, I think, a little bit. They sit at 3-5 on the season, but they are showing improvements. They've got a couple of recruits in play. I know Coach Clyde has talked about that in chat and in his reports that he's been generating, which we appreciate those reports. But 3-5 on the season. It's a little bit of a struggle coming out of the gate, but I think he's starting to find his footing. 3 wins out of the last 5 games is always a nice positive setup as you move forward. Next up, we have one of our Big 12 teams in Iowa State, who are currently sitting at 4-3 on the year. They have wins against the FCS Midwest. They have wins against Bowling Green. A nice win going away against a ranked Utah squad, and then West Virginia is their other W on the year, 30-7. You have losses against the number 3 team in the country, BYU. That's nothing to hang your head about. A close overtime loss in the Cy-Hawk game. I know that's a rough one to lose. A rivalry game is always a tough one to lose, but to lose in overtime right there is pretty good, and that's, I believe, double overtime because we're getting into 2-point conversions there. And then losing at Arizona doesn't help your Big 12 cause, but it is a nice showing. 4-3 at this point of the season, considering all the losses Iowa State had in this offseason. That's a good showing for Coach DLP in year 1. We'll see if he can get that crew rolling into year 2. Maryland Terrapins are next up on the docket, and they come into this particular show at 4-3. And as you can see, they have 2 losses on their docket that are against ranked opponents. So Ohio State and UCLA are both undefeated this season, so not to be surprised there. Maryland's still working on getting that personnel up to snuff to compete with the rest of the Big Ten. A surprise loss against Virginia Tech there, 31-28 at home. That's a little bit of a shocker, but they took care of business against FCS East, against UConn. Nebraska was a 3-point win as well, and then of course the Rutgers beatdown that they had. Poor Rusta had to go to Maryland and unfortunately got shown the door in a 51-10 loss. Hopefully Juke can kind of get going here at the end and maybe make a run for the upper portion of the Big Ten table. We'll talk about where he sits in the Big Ten in just a little bit. Okay, and talking about the other end of the whooping, uh, Coach Rust is having a little bit of a rough start in year 1, up there in Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey, I think. We come in at 2-5 on the season, which is near the end of the table in Big Ten play. But again, Rutgers is coming in kind of the lower end dogs in that conference. That is a monster conference. to try and jump in on and try and take over. It's going to take a couple of years to get that team to a point where they can start contending. You got to start at the bottom, unfortunately. Your two wins are against UMass and an FCS team, and as you can see, look at some of these tough teams they've had to play. They had to play USC at home, but still 51-3 against USC, 33-0 against Indiana. Maryland, again, we talked about already when we talked about Coach Juke, and then you go to Northwestern, and road games in this game are very tough. So losing 37-20 on the road is not anything really to hang your head about. It's just a matter of getting the personnel in that you need, and hopefully a good, strong recruiting class for Coach Rust and a good transfer portal will kind of get him back to where he can get that Rutgers team going in the right direction. All right, so now we are coming to conference play, and we're going to start with the Mountain West, where the UTEP Miners currently sit at the top of the conference. Again, UTEP is 5-2 and 3-0 in conference play, making the Miners the only undefeated team in the Mountain West Conference right now. Hawaii, though, is right behind them at 4-1 in the league, while North Dakota State and Wyoming are both 3-2. So right now, while UTEP is kind of sitting pretty, saying, "Hey, we're at the top of the conference," there are a lot of teams right there behind them that are just waiting for them to possibly lose one. So UTEP needs to keep winning to stay ahead in the Mountain West. Um, I will also say that while UTEP controls its destiny, do not sleep on UNLV. I know they're 1-2 in the conference, but they could easily make a run here. And if UTEP and Hawaii and Northern Illinois trip up a little bit, could be some smooth sailing for UNLV to sneak into a conference game and maybe try and get an automatic bid from the group of six. Now we move on to the Pac-12, and as you can see, Boise State is sitting real pretty. They're sitting at second in the conference with a 2-1 record in conference, 5-2 overall, which normally in most years would make Boise State really happy at this point in the season. There's only one problem. San Diego State apparently forgot to get the memo that they're not supposed to be at the top of the conference. They are currently sitting 4-0 and 7-1 overall. They are on a heater right now. I'm not sure if San Diego State is on the docket for Boise State or if Boise State has already played them. But if San Diego State is on the well, they got to be on the schedule because Pac-12 plays everybody at least once. So Boise State, you need to circle if you haven't played them already. You need to circle San Diego State and make sure that that is a one that you win. You cannot afford to stumble right now. Any loss outside of a San Diego State loss pretty much could end your playoff hopes, or as far as your conference hopes, as far as the conference championship is concerned. Now, this one I'm going to show a little differently because Georgia Southern, again, is a brand new user coming into us this week. Coach Studley's coming in to take over the squad that are sitting at 4-3. They started the year 1-3, as I mentioned earlier. They are now sitting at 4-3 and 3-0 in the Sun Belt East. So right now, they control their own destiny as far as making the conference championship game. Now, one thing to note is I want to show off that fact that in the West, UL Monroe is at the top of the conference at 3-0. So right now, if things stay the way they are, look for the Warhawks and the Eagles, two bird mascot teams, to make the Sun Belt Conference Championship. And if that happens, that could be a very interesting contest indeed to determine Sun Belt supremacy right there in the Sun Belt. In the American Conference, as you can see, UTSA and East Carolina sit about not quite mid-table, upper mid-table. Unfortunately, USF is running away with it, ranked 24th in the country at 3-0, and Florida Atlantic also there at 3-0, sitting at 5-2 overall. USF is undefeated right now, so they are on a heater, and above UTSA sits Tulsa. East Carolina is going to need some help to get into the mix as far as the American Conference is concerned. They're going to need some teams ahead of them to lose, and they're going to need to continue to win. 3-5 is a tough record to come back from, but Coach Cly, I think, is capable of it, especially if he gets a strong recruiting class. Look out for East Carolina in year 2. UTSA, look, Kendro is an amazing player. He's great on the sticks as far as offense is concerned. He's currently sitting at 5-3 overall, 3-1 in conference play, but he is also in a small room for error setup. He needs to win every single game moving forward as much as he can. Go and compete in every game to try and get back into the mix for the American Conference Championship or gameplay, the American Conference Championship game. But he's going to also, they're both going to have to hope for Florida Atlantic and USF to lose some games and come back to the pack so they can maybe make a run going forward. The Big 12 is kind of a slop heap right now. While BYU sits at the top, third in the country at 4-0 overall, 4-0 in the conference and 7-0 overall. You have Baylor, you have Colorado who sit with one conference loss. You have Arizona State, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Utah, Texas Tech. Every one of these teams, what is that, like a 9-way tie for like third, fourth place? So this is a slop down here in the muck. Iowa State and Kansas State have the ability, with the coaches they have in play and their talent levels, they have the means to get back up into the upper echelons. But unfortunately, that's going to involve them having to find some ways to beat some really good teams in a really tough Big 12 conference. A conference that's not known for playing defense. You're going to have to figure out a way to make some stops, get some points on the board, and kind of get your wins and gut your way up there to the top of the conference and try and make your way into the Big 12 championship game. So our biggest conference that we have user representation in is the Big Ten, and it is a large conference of 18 people, 18 different teams. As you can see, Maryland is right there in the dog heap with 2-2 record in conference play, 4-3 overall. They have some ability to climb up, but if you look at everybody above them is ranked. The only ones that they have to worry about coming from behind, Penn State and Oregon, are both behind them and ranked. Maryland surprisingly isn't ranked, but I guess it's because they're 4-3. Maryland's going to have to continue again, like earlier, to win football games and continue to build on that culture they have going as far as kind of starting to become a clutch team. Now, unfortunately for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, as you see, I can scroll down. They are at the bottom of the conference at 2-5 with an 0-4 conference play. It's a tough first year for Coach Rusta. Coach Rusta, I know from his time in WFL, he's a guy that likes to sling the rock around. He's very much a gunslinger. I don't know if he has those gunslingers and that talent level yet at Rutgers, but if he gets on the recruiting trail and works his tail off on the recruiting trail, I think he can have the Scarlet Knights turned around sooner rather than later. While he is at the bottom of the conference, and that is not a knock on his talent level at all, a good recruiting class in Piscataway will get them back up into the mid-table of the Big Ten next year, and then you build from that moving forward to get your way up to the top and get into the Big Ten championship game. And finally, in the MAC, we have Sacramento State, the newbies to the entirety of FBS, coming in at 5-4 with a 3-3 conference play record. That may not be enough to make it into the conference championship year one, but it is very respectable considering that Sacramento State was an FCS team just a year ago. They are competing with the likes of Akron and Ball State and UMass and Ohio and Western Michigan to kind of be at the top of the MAC conference. Now, again, Coach Smashmouth, his style is not really working out early on in Eastern Michigan. But I promise you, if he can find him a playbook and a style that fits his play style, which is power run, play good defense. The defense has been a struggle early on. A year of good recruiting for Coach Smashmouth and gutting it out and just kind of figuring out a playbook that fits his play style. And I guarantee you, in next season, I guarantee you he's better than second to last in the conference. He is a much better player than that. I hope that he's having a good recruiting year so that way he can continue to build that Eagles team going into year 2. So as we come back on camera, I just kind of want to reiterate some things as we move into the outro of this particular podcast. We've got folks that user teams that are sitting at the tops of their conferences with UTEP in the Mountain West and Georgia Southern in the Eastern Sun Belt Conference. We have folks that are right there in the heap of things with Boise State and UTSA. Boise State being 2-1 in the Pac-12, UTSA being 3-1 in the American Conference. You got some folks that are kind of in a dirty middle portion with Kansas State, Iowa State, Maryland, and Sacramento State kind of fighting for maybe bronze medal position at this point. And then you got teams that are hopefully trying to sneak in if some teams above them stumble, like UNLV and East Carolina. And then teams that are building for the future, like Rutgers and Eastern Michigan. That's where we stand right now. I like this type of setup where we have some teams at the top, we have some teams in the middle, we have some teams that are rebuilding. I don't want to say at the bottom, they're rebuilding. I'm hoping that everyone's having a good recruiting class. I'm hoping everyone's having success recruiting because the reason why I like Dynasty, that I've come to really love Dynasty and play in college football, is that every team has a different story and every story is kind of alterable by you. It's really, really a wonderful little thing, and you can put your own little spin on it. And yes, sometimes you don't always win, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, it's about building that future at that school, and hopefully taking a school that has had little to no success and kind of taking them to the promised land that every team deserves to hit at some point in time. Before I get out of here, before I finish up, I do want to kind of repeat something I did mention at the beginning. This is something I mentioned in the other show, the kind of the prequel show before this. I do want you guys involved in the show. I want this to be basically a celebration of VCFA, of everybody's stuff. I don't want to leave any team. I don't want to badmouth any team in this particular podcast ever, ever, ever. I want you guys involved in the show in ways of clipping highlights. If something happens that's ridiculous in one of your games, however it is, clip it. You got a big touchdown, clip it. Pick six, clip it. Game-winning field goal, clip it. Your quarterback throws directly to a linebacker, and you just laugh at the play because it's like goofy. Clip it. Highlight shows don't always mean highlights. Sometimes it is kind of follies. The more material you guys give me, the more Chiefsman's Corner can become an actual highlight show instead of me talking about win-loss records and conference standings, because these are all things you can get on screen. I don't mind doing that for right now, but I hope to make this more of a clip show going forward. I also, again, want to bring Ask the Chief back as a segment. I will be posting the forms where you can submit questions for that segment. And if enough people submit questions, or if anybody submits a question, I will have some dedicated time near the end of the podcast to go ahead and answer those questions. So that way you have a role in this show. I want you always to be tied into this show. This is not something I do just for ego. I want you guys to be involved in this process. I want you to enjoy being a part of this process. If you give me material, I will use it. With that being said, that is going to do it for the return edition, the reboot edition of Chiefsman's Corner. I would say this was a little shorter, but this is about, well, I've done our podcast. But hopefully it gives everybody a good idea of where we're at the midpoint of this season and where we're going as we go into the second half of the season. And we're going to be doing these regularly again. We're going to be doing them every Wednesday. So I want those clips. I want those highlights. I want those questions. I want you to be involved in this process. Please interact with the league. Playing your games is important, but talk about your teams. Post recruiting news whenever you get it. Post articles. There's a great thing in our Discord chat. Clyde posted something about how to basically let AI do the work for you. I know that Juke has done some. I've done some. Thanks to Clyde, and Clyde has done some. I would love it if everybody did some, but obviously time constraints happen. But the nice thing about AI is, uh, I've used it myself. If you take a couple of screenshots of stats and stuff, tell the AI how you want it to word stuff, and then it just basically prints it out for you. Find you a place to post it, and that's it. It's not. It's. I truly cannot say how uncomplicated it is. But ask questions. Talk trash in Discord as long as it's respectful, man. Talk trash in Discord. Let's just feel like we're a community. It's been a long time since we've kind of had that community feel. Back in the WFL days when we were jamming 32-man league, it was like that. I know we're not a large league, but that doesn't mean we have to be a quiet one. I want this league to be vibrant. But until next Wednesday, guys, the corner is closed.